all of us are volunteers. Louder. Welcome, everyone. So we're here for our third Lunch and Learn of this series, which I just wanted to sort of plug. We'll be continuing next fall. So while this is the last before the summer, we'll have some new cool topics coming at you. Hopefully be hosted at Jose Society in the fall. So there you go. But today we're here to speak on ableism, as you well know, and we have lovely Lori, who works at Rebound, to speak with us for about an hour today. All right? Welcome.
Hello everyone, and yes, my name is Lori. Thank you very much for coming out today. I really appreciate the support, and it truly is a privilege to be able to speak on ableism. It is a journey that I do walk every day. I'm just going to take a second to set myself up here on the laptop. I just want to say that the presentation today, I have made it very visual. I chose not to use a PowerPoint today. It's very hands-on because, in fact, people who have disabilities work very hands-on with their disabilities each and every day. So it really is not a matter of the click of a button and sort of walking through their struggles and challenges every day. So I chose to make it very hands-on. I have some of the devices that I use to get me through the day, and so that's sort of the decision that I made in presenting the workshop. Please feel free to jump in at any moment in time, ask any questions. This is very much an open dialogue for conversation. I am very comfortable with who I am and my disability, if you will, so I don't have any objections to answering any questions whatsoever. So please feel free to ask any questions and correct me if there's anything that you would like some assistance in to explain any further. So we are here to definitely talk about ableism. And what is ableism? Ableism is the discrimination or prejudice against somebody who is disabled. This can be done certainly with intent or purpose, or this can be done certainly on a basis where there is no intent. So somebody can do it without even realizing that they have discriminated against that individual. The risk, of course, is that certainly it can devalue and limit the potential of people with disabilities. So that is the concern there. We've all heard the expression, "Sticks and stones can break my bones, but names or words will never hurt me." So I'd like to just provide a little bit of an introduction. Like all of us in the room, I do have a number of roles, as each and every one of you do as well. So certainly I am a daughter, a sister, a niece, a wife, a mom, an aunt, a best friend, a neighbor, student, board member, volunteer, social worker, and now a staff at Rebound. However, often and several times throughout the week, as I leave the safety net of my home, it's very common for me to be randomly addressed as crippled, midget, handicapped, dwarf, little person, lame, funny-looking lady, quote-unquote, disabled, shorty, or special. So clearly, all of the above words are labels. And what is the purpose of the label? Is to clearly identify something. This is why I brought the can. That's really all that it does. It just identifies something. And I, and I'm sure all of you, or anybody else in our shoes, do not want to be seen as a label. And if you take it even further, at least with a can, you can look and you can see the ingredients on what's on the inside. But with the label, you risk the the opportunity of not being given the chance to really understand the person that is on the inside. So that, for a lot of people who have disabilities, don't often get that opportunity to explain who they truly are on the inside. So that was clearly an example of what I wanted to explain there. It may take a little bit longer for me or any other person with a disability to explain who I am, to explain that I enjoy cooking, that I enjoy spending time with my family, I love my pets, that I enjoy camping, all of those things. They take an extra amount of time, and that works both ways. So it takes time for the listener as well as the disabled person. In the bigger context of ableism, because of these labels, it may be that people with disabilities may be rejected more often in developing relationships, searching for jobs, and as well as housing. As a younger person, this can create a lot of stress. I have a daughter who is a little person as well, and so how she has chosen to handle it often was to be the class clown. So being the midget, the dwarf, she spent a lot of her time in high school just being the class clown, so she adapted to that role, and that is how she ended up being the cool one in the high school. You end up paying a price for that, though, down the line. In university, I often struggled with applying for jobs. Do I identify on the cover letter that I have a disability and outline it right then and there so there's no surprises when I arrive? Or do I just leave it, highlight my qualifications, and then surprise? That was always a bit of a challenge for me as to how to address it. Both ways ended up working, I must say. But, so, disability by definition is an impairment or a limitation, having difficulty in doing a certain task and having problems in performing life situations. Most of you, I think, are certainly aware of the different types of disabilities: developmental, which can be autism, Down syndrome, dyslexia. Mental illness is a disability, emotional disabilities, and certainly physical disabilities. Noticing that what I provided as examples are diagnoses, not labels. Disabilities can be visible or invisible. Disabilities can be genetic. So in my case, I was born a little person. They can be acquired during the birthing process, obviously through lack of oxygen, etc., or they can develop postnatal. Somebody who has obviously perhaps been in a car accident. My husband, many of you know, had an accident when he was 11 and acquired a brain injury due to a motor vehicle accident. So that is an example there. Most people with disabilities would agree that attitudes of the, I don't want to say the general public, but of others can be the biggest barrier for disability. It can certainly create stereotypes and misconceptions, and then therefore that does create a problem or lack of participation for that person in the community, inability to make their own decisions, ultimately resulting in a lack of community contributions such as socializing, gaining jobs and employment, becoming a part of social clubs, etc. Attitudes as well that I certainly have experienced is the entitlement of knowledge and or opinion. It seems to be that there's a fine line of education awareness and then a feeling that people in their way of trying to strike up conversation can sort of cross the line in this entitlement of needing to know. and sometimes that can be seen as quite rude and disrespectful. And I'm not sure that they really even recognize it in themselves, but they can come up and you know, start to ask questions that can be seen as quite inappropriate. I can recall a time when my daughter, we have 2 daughters, one who is a little person, one who is average, and so myself and my daughter Jessie, who's a little person, we were walking. My average-sized daughter Sherry was pushing the cart, and an older man said to my daughter Sherry, "How'd you like to be little like them?" And my daughter Sherry said, "That's my mom." So that didn't go over very well. People don't realize who they're talking to, how they're saying it, and how the message comes across clearly. That's just a reminder of my luncheon money. I think it's also important as well, just in tagging on that I'm very open and very welcoming of teachable moments, but not everybody, is receptive to that, and not every time needs to be a teachable moment. I think the respect is very important to the individual, and just like anybody else, we might be having a bad day, and it might not be the right time just to start opening up the what ifs, ands, and how comes. So sometimes that can, I think the respect goes a long way as far as, when to create that opportunity for discussion. I find generally children, truthfully, are the most open, honest, and receptive to any discussion about any differences in general. I find adults can be their biggest hinder. Often kids, they just want to know, the facts, and then they want to move on. And that, truthfully, is just the way it is. And a lot of times I will find and hear, "Don't ask her, just don't upset her, don't rock the boat, let's go," and they're dragging the child along. And really they're just curious. And once they find out all the facts and they put it into their mind that she's an adult, she's small, and that's the way life is, they can move on. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in the moment and so worried about the bigger items that we forget that, we just need to just keep it normalized as best as we can. So that's certainly, and I've certainly had encouraged parents, it's okay, let them ask the questions, it's fine. It's not a bad thing. Certainly there are physical barriers, and I'm just speaking in terms of what I have experienced. And they can be hidden barriers even for myself until you actually get to the location. Stairs are an issue for me. High counters at the banks can be a problem. Grocery stores, items on the shelves, way up high can be a bit of an issue. Grocery carts are a difficulty. Public washrooms, the sinks, the hand soap, digital photo booths. So I put a stool out there. I don't go far without the stool. So even at Walmart, it's not unusual to see that I grab the stool off of the regular shelf and use that to process my photos. Fast food restaurants are a challenge, and that would go for anybody that is uses a wheelchair as well, where they strategically place all the condiments and straws and napkins, etc. Our home is modified, which is, we are very blessed for that. Low counters, lower light switches, sinks. My average-sized daughter now has to go on her knees to wash the dishes. I say, "Welcome to my world." That's that's a luxury that we have. Not every person with a disability has that luxury. So we are very fortunate for that. But in the world of grocery shopping, etc. This is a tool that I do use for reaching items off the shelf, you know, a can, hopefully not dropping it. Thankfully, they have these tools for people with disabilities. This, my father made for me when driving a vehicle, which I'm able to use to switch in the car, you know, in changing the radio station, adjusting the temperature gauge. My dad learned to be very creative when I was first born, so thankful to him, that's for sure. Those kind of situations arise frequently. People can be very receptive, I find, in pointing them out, that they will be quick to resolve the problem, resolve the issue, and certainly move forward on them. Curb cuts are a big nuisance for people who are in wheelchairs, and maintaining them, I will say, as well, is also a big challenge. That can be, you know, a real barrier for people even using walkers, canes. If they're not smooth, if they are rigid in any way, that can be a big risk as well. Anybody have any questions so far?
I have a question. When you're in the grocery store and you've got your little, I'm getting a can down, I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, just call it a reacher.
A reacher, your reacher.
Yeah.
Now, do you find people come up to you and try to offer to help, or do people stand back and watch, or are you even paying attention to what's going on in the rest of the aisle?
That's a good question, Brooke. Yeah. People will offer our help, or their help. And a lot of time, like, it adds so much more time to our shopping. Like, that is a very good point. You know, we're looking at the product, how are we gonna get it down? Do I really need it? Is there another one that we could use? You know, and that, you know, and then, you know, maybe this will reach so far, maybe it won't. You know, so people are wonderful. They will jump in. I think, you know, everybody has their own feeling and comfort level with their own disability. Some people are not so receptive to the offering of help.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you very much. We greatly appreciate it. You saved me 5 minutes. Like, other people will be a little bit more sensitive to it, and nope, and my husband is a classic example. The last time we went grocery shopping, he put these on the ground and stood on them, and then reached. I'm like, you are so stubborn. Like, really? You're gonna get another brain injury. Like, you're crazy. Like, oh my gosh, just ask her for help. Like, you know, so people are all
Laura,
different.
that might be a guy thing. That might be a guy thing.
It might be a guy thing. Yeah, it might be. Honestly. But, yeah, I find most people are very helpful. Same thing with items in the cart. There's no way I can get items out of the cart. Like, no way. So then people usually behind me will say, can I give you a hand? And I will say, thank you. Absolutely. Yeah. So they are, yeah. It helps a lot. And my daughter Sherry doesn't go far without me when I go grocery shopping, let me say. Come in. And there was a recent study done March of this year, actually. It's a British report, but I don't think the stats are too far off. In fact, I would even say that they might be a little low. That states that a quarter of the people with disabilities are cited as lonely, that they're isolated, they're lonely, they don't have supports in their lives, and I would tend to agree with that. And again, I would even say they might be a bit low. So moving on to engaging with people who have disabilities. Why do we think that is so difficult to engage with people with disabilities? Some people say that they are uncomfortable. They're afraid of what to say. They don't want to say the wrong thing. They don't want to use the wrong language. I think the bottom line And the literature cites it, is just obviously treat them with respect. Just start with that, see them as individuals, and you can't go wrong. I would say, and I'm sort of jumping into my own couple of experiences, don't use icebreakers, don't use humor. That really doesn't go over very well. I remember being in university and being at a restaurant and having, waiting with 3 of my friends, and the host comes up and says, "Oh, we need a table for 3.5. That didn't go over well. No. And can I talk to your manager?
Good for you.
So, that it happens, but it's not good. I mean, really using humor like that is disability is part of the person. It's just like saying, really nice eyes, like, where'd you get those? I mean, it's the same thing. So, not a good thing to use in trying to establish rapport with people. The other thing is not to patronize people. And I think that happens, and I even remember in my own experience, people, family members, people will say, "Oh my gosh, you're so amazing, I don't know how you do it, blah, blah, blah." Then you start to separate it all, and you think, okay, are they saying it because I'm really good at what I do, or is it because of my disability? And if it's because of the disability, don't bother. I'm a person, and just because it takes a little longer to do what I do, let's just leave it at that. So ask the person that you're working with for the language that they're most comfortable using. Be prepared that people may be at different stages of accepting their disability and may not be open to talking or sharing. They may be more closed. They may be more upset about accessibility issues and frustrated with the system. So, and everybody's experience is different. So, just to say, have that open dialogue and let them be the leaders. Start with the person and let them start the journey. I guess you don't know where they have started with their experience either. If they've just recently been diagnosed with MS, if they just had their accident, if it's if it's been that lifelong journey, that's one thing. But you really have to give them that consideration. I think that's very important. Don't make assumptions about people's disability. Let them be your best resource. Ask before you help. Don't be offended if someone declines your offer. And perhaps give them a bit more time in completing tasks. So I have one of my very closest friends who is more like a sister, but she'll rush in and do everything. Like, she's just wonderful. And I know she does it to be helpful, but I can do it. So, I think people try to overcompensate to make life just a little bit easier. But sometimes that can be undermining as well. As far as allowing for extra time, it does take me extra time to do pretty much a lot. Or in my husband's case, for example, it does take him extra time with the brain injury to process things. You can see the eyes rolling at the restaurant when he's trying to make a decision. What am I going to have? He's not mentally challenged. He's just trying to process everything. So allowing that extra time goes a long way. Talk directly to the person, not to those around them. That's very important. I'm sure everyone realizes that. Speak normally. Don't talk louder or slower. Use the same language that you would normally use. If you're speaking to someone who's visually impaired, don't be afraid to say, "See what I mean?" They're not going to shudder or be, embarrassed or disgusted that you use that language. But it is important to put people first. So people in front of the disability is always the golden rule. Be aware of personal space. those who use a wheelchair, a walker, a cane, that is also an extension of their personhood. I remember when I've had several surgeries, and I would become very particular, almost nasty, when someone would take my wheelchair or walker and move it right across the room. Don't do that to me, because that just totally changes my whole reason or ability to move around, and my whole ability to be accessible. So that you really have to be sensitive to that. Ask them where they want their walker put. Where can we put it to make you, is it better here, is it better here? Let them be in control of their body and their aids. People first language, I know I just touched on that, but just again really quickly, always people with disabilities, not the handicapped or the disabled. He has an intellectual disability, not the mentally retarded. My son has autism, not my son is autistic. He has a learning disability, or she has a physical disability. I thought this was interesting because everybody has seen the Little People Big World show, right? But the literature is now saying he is of short stature, or he's short instead of little person. I didn't even realize that. So I guess I'm just short. This is a wheelchair, not that he's confined to a wheelchair. Kids without disability, and this is a big one, not normal kids. That really is my pet peeve. Who's normal anyways? She receives special education, not she's in special ed. Accessible parking, not handicap parking or handicap washrooms. She has a need for, and not that she has a problem with. So language is so important.